Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into robotic process automation today and specifically how it's changing the world of HR. We've got this report from 2022, and it's full of real user reviews of UiPath. You know UiPath is a big name in the RPA world. And let me tell you, there's some pretty incredible insights in here. Like, just imagine robots doing your payroll or handling all your new employee onboarding. That's what we're going to be looking at today, how that's becoming a reality.
It's kind of funny how perfectly RPA just fits right into the HR world, because HR is all about processes, right? Tons of repetition, lots and lots of data entry. And that's where RPA really shines. It's like having the super efficient, like a digital worker who just eats up those tasks and makes sure everything's accurate and super fast.
So it's more than just, simple automation then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's this example in the report from a global company. I think they were in mining and manufacturing. And they were using UiPath to tackle this huge problem they had, keeping all their personnel data in sync between all these different systems. I mean, we've all seen how messy that can get, especially in these big organizations. And they were also using UiPath to manage external consultants, making sure that all the paperwork is done right and everything's on time.
That sounds like a huge relief for HR teams. It gives them the chance to focus on, the stuff that really matters, like strategy and the people.
Exactly. It's not just about saving time, though. It's about real business value. The report highlights this company that was really struggling with reporting functions in their Workday HCM software. And they got really creative, and they used UiPath to automate those reports. And that not only saved them a bunch of time, but also reduced the risk of making mistakes by a lot.
So it seems like companies are finding all these new ways to use RPA, pushing the boundaries.
Oh, for sure. And the results are really something. Like, there's a story about this Oracle ERP consultant who totally revamped their payroll process using UiPath. Before RPA, they were spending days on payroll and payslips. Can you imagine the delays and mistakes? But with UiPath, they automate the whole thing. And they got that processing time down from days to minutes.
Wow, that's incredible. Talk about a productivity boost. Does the report say anything about, average time savings businesses are seeing with RPA?
That's a good question. I don't think this specific report gives an overall average, but there's some really interesting examples. Like, there was this associate director at a government agency. They used UiPath to automate 12 shared services processes. Finance, HR, procurement, you name it. They were essentially doing everything twice because they were using two different platforms.
So RPA helped them cut the work in half.
Oh, it was way more than that. By getting rid of all that double data entry with RPA, they saved thousands of person hours every year. And their accuracy went way up, too. It just shows how RPA isn't about replacing jobs. It's about helping people be way more efficient. And get this same associate director, they had one process that took 15 minutes before. And with RPA, it went down to just 1 minute and 4 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So think about how much time that saves across all their processes.
That's mind-blowing. It's not just individual tasks anymore. It's whole workflows being transformed. Did they mention any other specific ways that RPA is changing how HR works?
Yeah, definitely. One that stood out was about this senior software developer at a tech company. They used RPA to automate a penalty system for when employees miss their transportation. And they did it in a really clever way. They combined RPA with Windows Server and PowerShell scripting, which is basically a really powerful way to automate things within Windows. It shows how flexible RPA is. You can really tailor it to specific needs.
That's a cool example. It seems like if you're creative enough, there's no limit to what you can do with RPA. Anything else interesting?
Let's see. Oh, yeah, there was one about a web developer at a government agency. And they were thinking about using RPA to deal with onboarding all their seasonal firefighters. They hire a ton of firefighters every season, so you can imagine all the paperwork. RPA could just take over that whole process, make it smooth and efficient for everyone. They could even schedule it to happen automatically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Then the HR team could focus on, the more strategic parts of onboarding, like making sure the firefighters have the right resources and support. Speaking of support, did they talk about how RPA affects employees and their jobs?
Yeah, and in a good way.
Yeah.
They mentioned this financial services company that retrained 10 of their full-time employees, 10 FTs from operations roles into RPA developer roles. So instead of getting rid of jobs, they actually gave their employees new skills.
That's fantastic. It shows that RPA can be a positive force in an organization, better efficiency and employee development. It really seems like everyone wins.
Yeah, it really is. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. Speaking of working smarter, there's something else I wanted to bring up. Oh, yeah, it's like, RPA lets HR folks finally break free from all those boring, repetitive tasks. And that gives them the space to focus on more important stuff. Things like developing talent, engaging employees, creating a better work environment, more inclusive and positive.
So it's not just about being faster, it's about making room for, those human elements that really matter in HR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the huge time savings that RPA offers. I mean, we've already heard some pretty impressive examples. Remember the associate director who went from a 15-minute process down to 1 minute and 4 seconds? Those kinds of savings add up really fast. In their case, it was thousands of person hours every year.
It's amazing when you think about it. All that time they get back to focus on more important work. But what about the downsides? Like, doesn't relying on all those preset rules make RPA kind of inflexible? What happens if things don't go according to plan?
I see what you mean. But RPA isn't trying to get rid of human judgment altogether. It's more about giving humans a helping hand. So, for example, RPA can handle most of a process based on the rules. But if there's something unusual, an exception, it can flag it for a human to check.
So like a safety net. The robot does the boring stuff, but the humans are still there to handle the tricky things.
Exactly. And another thing, RPA actually helps to reduce errors a lot. The report even mentioned one user who saw big improvements in their data quality and lead time. Because when you automate processes based on set rules, you're getting rid of a lot of the chances for human error.
Like having a robot assistant that double checks everything to make sure it's right. And speaking of assistants, what about all those tasks that involve tons of data, the ones nobody wants to do? How does RPA handle those?
RPA is fantastic at batch processing. Think about those giant spreadsheets, employee records, payroll information, all that stuff that takes forever to do manually. RPA can process it all really quickly and accurately. And that frees up HR people to focus on more strategic tasks.
I'm starting to get why everyone says RPA is a game changer for HR. Fast, accurate handles the boring stuff. But is it a one-size-fits-all solution? What makes a good RPA solution for HR?
That's the key question. And the report talks about a few important things to look for. First of all, you need a system that's open. A platform that can work with all your existing HR systems, like SAP, Workday, whatever you're using.
Yeah, you don't want to create more silos. You want to break them down.
Did they give any examples of successful integrations?
Yeah, they mentioned someone who connected UiPath to their SAP system. They used the SAP connector. That kind of open platform approach is super important if you want to get the most out of RPA across all your HR functions.
It sounds complicated to set up, though. Is it only for tech people?
Not at all. Actually, that's another important thing to think about. Design and how easy it is to use. HR folks are already busy, so they need a system that's intuitive and easy to pick up. UiPath has gotten a lot of positive feedback for its user-friendly interface. Drag and drop stuff like that.
Yeah, if it's not easy to use, people just won't bother with it. Exactly. And that leads us to another key point. Simple bot management. You need a system that makes it easy to create, deploy, and manage those bots, even if you're not a tech expert.
So even people who don't speak robot can handle it.
Exactly. So UiPath, for example, they have these things called attended and unattended bots. Attended bots are like virtual assistants. They work alongside humans helping them with specific tasks. But unattended bots, those guys can run on their own, like little worker bees in the background taking care of all those boring, repetitive things.
That's interesting. So you can choose the level of automation you need for your team and how you work. Did they talk about anyone who changed how they used bots?
Yeah, they mentioned this user who is planning on using attended bots for their HR team. But then they realized, hey, we can actually automate these tasks completely unattended, which freed up their team even more.
Like giving your team superpowers. What else should we be thinking about when choosing RPA for HR?
Data quality and analytics are crucial. RPA produces a ton of data, and you need a system that can help you make sense of it all. You'll see trends, measure how well your automation's working.
So it's not just about automating tasks, it's about understanding what you're achieving with that automation.
Exactly. And the report highlights how RPA can actually improve data quality by reducing errors. Remember the user who mentioned better lead times and higher quality data? That's the power of RPA.
So it's not just a productivity tool, it's a data quality tool too. It's changing how we work in so many ways. But with all this talk about efficiency and data, there's a question that keeps coming up for me. Are we kind of missing the human side of HR with all this talk about efficiency and data?
That's a really good point. It's definitely something we need to be careful about. But RPA isn't about, taking the human out of HR. It's actually the opposite. When you get rid of those boring, repetitive tasks, it frees up HR people to focus on the things that really make them valuable. Their human skills,
So it's about putting the human back in human resources.
Exactly. It's about giving them the time and energy to focus on things like building relationships, creating a positive work environment, and helping employees, reach their full potential.
So RPA is giving HR the chance to become more strategic.
Right. And that's going to require a change in mindset. We need to embrace learning and be able to adapt. The skills we need today might not be the skills we need tomorrow. RPA is just one example of how technology is changing the workplace.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we all need to keep learning and growing, no matter what we do.
Absolutely. And as technology keeps advancing, we're going to see even more uses for RPA in HR. What's really exciting is how RPA can free up HR professionals to focus on what they're best at. Connecting with people, understanding their needs, creating a workplace where everyone feels valued.
So it's a win-win for companies and employees. Companies get more efficiency and accuracy, and employees get to do more meaningful work.
That's the goal. And it's important to remember that RPA is still pretty new. We're just starting to see what it can really do.
So what's next for RPA in HR? What can we expect in the next few years?
Well, I think RPA is going to become even more embedded in HR. We'll see smarter bots that can handle even more complex tasks. And I think more and more companies are going to use RPA to achieve their strategic goals. Things like talent development and diversity and inclusion.
It sounds like HR has a bright future, and RPA is a big part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's a really exciting time to be in HR. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. We've talked about a lot. Real-world examples of RPA, the potential benefits, what to look for in an RPA solution. But what was the most interesting thing for you? What really stood out? We want to hear from you. Share your questions, your thoughts, even your own experiences with RPA. You can find us on social media. And until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, the future of work is human.